If you have played Deepwoken in recent months, you'll probably realize Deepwoken feels different. And I'm not just talking about the UI or the visuals. I'm talking about a core change that nobody really seems to have noticed. So let's go back, before all this, to a bit of a simpler time. The date is September 20th, 2024. The week beforehand, the developers just released the now infamous Silent Heart rework. And now, this week, they're reworking Vision Shaper. This was an expected update. Many people expected updates to the clones, and things to help stop the move stacking Vision Shaper was very famous for. But they did more than just these expected changes. To understand how this update may very well have set Deepwoken on its path to downfall, you need to understand how this oath interacted with the game on a larger level. Vision Shaper was used almost exclusively for PvP builds focused on high damage and singling out people who tried to run from fights. The main reason for this was Vision Shaper had an ability called Illusory Realm, or as I call it sometimes, Vision Shaper Realm. A very high risk, high reward ability that locked the user into what is basically a domain expansion. Both ally and enemy, anybody nearby would be instantly transported into a dark, flat and open dimension. People inside the realm could not interact with people outside of it, which stopped people from running away from the center by pushing them back towards the middle. Instead of escaping or trying to run away, people were forced to fight. If they did try and run, they would likely take a lot of damage in doing so. You could not die inside the realm. This is what made it very interesting. If you hit 0% HP, you would be left at 0% HP until the realm ended. When the realm did end, you would not die, you would simply be left at the HP you were at when the realm ended. This gave Vision Shaper Realm a unique ability to equalize and isolate fights. Deepwoken has 0 features that do anything even remotely similar. As you can expect by a description of its abilities, Vision Shaper was used quite frequently in the depths. It kept squishy, hypermobility builds in check. If a hypermobility build got caught in the realm, they would be forced to fight, something they were likely not very good at. Vision Shaper was also famously used mainly to stop people from trying to avoid a fight. When attempting to void, the realm would kidnap them, instantly making it so they had to fight. Usually, someone who was popping the Vision Shaper Realm was confident enough to deal enough damage to prevent them to void when the Vision Shaper Realm ended. To most people, this was a skilled countermeasure to stop running, and it still involved risk for the user. It could help the person winning or the person losing, only depending on how it was used. Vision Shaper Realm was an extremely important balancing tool for keeping builds in check during depth ganks. People were forced to run normal builds that actually fought, instead of relying on specific cheese or hypermobility to escape very bad situations. But on that day, they reworked Vision Shaper, and they removed Illusory Realm. It was replaced with a much less useful ability called Mirror Illusion. Mirror Illusion knocked back the target and spawned a clone of the target. This was nothing like Vision Shaper Realm. It was much weaker and much less useful. The whole purpose of the realm was to keep cheese builds in check. So when they removed the only thing keeping these builds in check, the meta instantly shifted in favor of these cheese builds. The depths almost overnight became dominated by extremely high mobility builds. These builds use so much mobility that normal builds are almost fully incapable of catching them. These builds initially followed a very simple archetype. They usually were Attunementless Heavy or Gale. Attunementless Heavy mainly used because of its high damage output, with an oath like Jet Striker or Star Kindred to help with his movement. They stack mobility tools like Dash and Strong Leap, and even low investment options like Flame Leap or the Gale Leap passive. And due to the depths having naturally lower gravity, this playstyle became even stronger and harder to counter. But that was only one archetype that came from the removal of Illusory Realm. It gets worse. A lot worse. Bird builds. Aptly named due to their ability to fly almost infinitely, with very little downsides and very little counterplay. Fighting a competent bird meant you basically had 0 chance of killing them. Just take a look at this. There's really nothing a normal build can do against that. You have to be just as specialized as another bird in order to have even a single chance of catching them. What do you do? There's nothing you can do. They just fly away. There's nothing you can do. This wasn't a normal meta, where you could still usually fight back. It defied all logic of the game. It broke how the game worked on a fundamental level. Most builds were able to at least run away in some method, usually using Dash or Shadow Assault, or some other movement ability to help get away. But when the entire archetype works specifically on movement abilities, it leaves normal builds in the dust. This didn't just create an overpowered meta. It broke the game, fundamentally. You were unable to fight these builds unless you used the exact same type. It killed one of Deepwoken's core features, that being build diversity. When you are forced into just one archetype of build to even have a chance to win, build making instantaneously becomes stale and boring. And in the depths, when dying means losing your build permanently, you are forced to play like a bird or get killed by a bird. If a bird build was played properly, you had almost no chance of killing them unless you were also a bird. This took away the whole risk-reward system of depth skinking, the risk being you could also die, but in reward, you could kill your opponent. Bird builds didn't have this weakness. If they were used properly, you had no chance of killing them. You would lose almost every single time. Hard stop. The timing lines up nearly perfectly. Vision Shaper Realm was removed on September 20th, and by late September of the same year, Infinite Flight builds were already being posted on YouTube, although they did not gain very much traction until several months later. These builds existed beforehand, but beforehand there was punishment, there was counterplay, that being Vision Shaper Realm. Once this counterplay was removed, the popularity exploded. On January 3rd, there was a futile attempt to nerf bird builds. They made it so specific mantras did not have their cooldown start to reset till after you touched the ground. While a good change to stop infinite birding, it did not fix the core issue with birding, which is the fact that they could gain an enormous amount of distance with very little counterplay. One of the first actual proper nerfs to birds came on May 2nd, 2025. Star Kindred, the main oath used for birding, lost its buff dash and depths. This reduced their airtime permanently. This was a good and deserving change, but it came nearly 8 months too late. It has been nearly 8 full months since Vision Shaper Realm was removed. 8 months of this meta. 8 months of being unable to fight back if someone had the right build and the right playstyle. And during that time, the player count slowly dropped. There were obviously other factors, but it's very likely a lot of dedicated players left because of this. I almost quit myself, not because I was losing, but because I couldn't fight back. And if I refused to play like a bird, I would almost certainly lose every single time. And this leads into the real problem. The real thing that I think truly hurt Deepwoken permanently. The players who quit during this time were likely not the people abusing bird builds. It was the people who were victims of the bird builds. The regular players, the normals. The regular players, the normies, the average players. The people who didn't seek to win every single gank. They played for fun. They experimented with builds for fun, not to win. The people who made up the great majority of the Deepwoken community. They were bullied off by a small percentage of the community. The people who stayed, who didn't leave, were likely the ones who adapted to every meta. They changed their build after every patch. The ones who played exclusively to win. Not for fun, to win. So what happens? You're left with two groups. New players and tryhards. The new players don't matter here. They're still too early into the game to really affect the meta. So, who else are you left with? The tryhards, the metamancers, the people who only play the game to win. The most miserable and toxic people to be around. And when those are the majority of the people left, you're left with a disgusting game. You're left with a game infected by people who only care to win, not for fun. It makes the game miserable to play for normal people. It creates this vicious cycle where these people who would play only to win push out the normal players, and then less normal players are left, so the only thing they have to do is fight other really toxic and tryhard players. This results in a feedback loop, where the more players leave, the average skill rises, and the game becomes more and more punishing for average players. And over time, the game shifts. It becomes less about the normal players, the exploration and the build diversity, and the trying out every new update. It becomes more about abusing every new update, about winning, about making your opponent have less fun than you are. In my opinion, this is the feedback loop that killed Deepwoken, or at least killed its community. Not just the buggy updates, not just the lack of content. The community itself changed, and it changed permanently. And it all started with one decision: removing Vision Shaper Realm.